Alright, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about color and how colors work together. So our primary learning goals for today is to be able to identify the primary qualities of color, sort of the three main attributes that we need to be aware of in order to effectively mix and work with color. We need to be able to think about and describe the different color schemes that are available, as well as being able to explain how different artworks are using color schemes in order to create specific visual effects. Right, so before we really get going here, we need to understand how we see color biologically. Right, so we know that white light contains all the entire spectrum of colors. And what happens as the white light hits an object, for example, a red apple, what happens is that all of the other colors except for the red get absorbed by the surface of the object. And it is the color that we see is actually the color that is not absorbed. It is what reflects off the object and then into our eyes. So we perceive the red because it is only the red color that is kind of bouncing off the object in order for us to be able to see it. So what exactly does that mean? Well, we need to be thinking about color in a variety of different ways, right? And if we take a moment, I want you to just take a look at these couple of graphics here. Right? Do you see anything or any numbers perhaps in these patterns of colored circles? Right? Take a moment, take a quick look. Right? Do you discern if there are any numbers there? Right? What you might actually find is that depending on whether you are male or female, then you are going to be able to see some of those colors or numbers a little bit easier than the other. The fact of the matter is that males and females see color differently, and there's different parts of the color spectrum that each sex is able to discern a little bit better than the other. Okay, so there are biological ways in which we are more prone to be able to receive different colors out of the color spectrum. Okay? So that's really important to remember because how we see is going to affect what we are able to see as well. Okay, so when we're talking about color, there are three main attributes that we need to be thinking about. Number one is the hue, right? Think about this as the name of the color, right? So if you go into an art store and you go down the paint aisle and there can be hundreds of different tubes of paint. Right? You get to the section that is what you would consider to be blue. Well, there are varieties of different types of blue. There's Prussian blue, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, right? There's a very long list of different types of blue. So when we're talking about the hue, we're talking about that specific name to the actual color, right? And that's really important. So hue, think about that label that you end up finding. And this is important because when you're in class and you're working with your colleagues or your peers and your teacher, you might be advising, you might need a little bit more of that cerulean blue in this part of the painting. And understanding that they're talking about a specific hue is going to be extremely helpful. The second attribute that we need to be aware of is that of saturation. And this has to do with the purity of a color. So think about it this way. If you have two hues, and you mix them together, you're changing the purity of each of those different hues. Okay? So we have the color itself and how pure it is in terms of its sort of original coloration. And the last attribute that we have as well is something that we call value, right? And this is whether the hue is light or dark, right? And we can manipulate the value of a particular hue by adding varying degrees of white in order to tint it, or adding black in order to shade it. That's really a lot of colors when we're starting to think about hue, saturation, and value. All right? In order to simplify this process, we have the color wheel. And basically what the color wheel does is it breaks down the full spectrum of colors into sort of a bite-sized different pieces, and it allows us to think about colors and different color relationships just a little bit easier. Right? And I'm going to explain what I mean in just a second. Right? So the most basic kind of colors that we have when it comes to additive color theory, right, and that's the type of color mixing and color theory that we use when we're painting, for example, because we add colors together, are yellow, blue, and red. Right? And you can see in this diagram that those three colors, they exist within the triangle at the very center of the diagram. Right? What's unique about the primary colors is that no matter what, we can't mix any other two colors in order to create them. Right? So they are impossible to mix. We have to use specific hues and pigments in order to be able to get these particular colors. Right? So we have primary, and then you will notice as well that along each side of the triangle, there's another triangle attached. And the way we read this is that when we take a yellow and blue, we end up getting a green color. When we take blue and red, we end up with purple, and yellow and red, we end up with orange. And when we mix two primary colors together, we get our secondary colors here, here, and here. And as we continue to mix, right, we're able to start creating different types of colors as well, and we get color variety. Right, so I always kind of think of my primary colors as I can't mix them. My secondary colors, I'm mixing them in a 1-to-1 ratio, and then we get the actual color wheel itself. And with the color wheel itself, we end up getting the full circle. Right? And this is what we call our tertiary colors. And these are the colors that exist in between our primary and our secondary colors. Right? So this green here is a tertiary. This orange is a tertiary. And the way that we start to describe these colors is by saying, you know what, this is a yellowy orange, or this is a yellowy green. And what we're essentially saying is that there's a disproportion of one of the primaries in relationship to the other. Okay? So this is still yellow and blue mixed together, but there is more yellow. That's why we say it's yellowy, right? Likewise, down here, we could say we have a reddish purple, right? We're still mixing blue and red together to get purple, but there's more red, right? It's reddish. Right? So we have these three sort of layers of color that go from the most fundamental colors, right, out to the broader spectrum of colors for us to be able to use. Okay? But just thinking about the color wheel all on its own doesn't really do us a whole lot of good. So we also, in addition, have color schemes that kind of describe those relationships that exist within the color wheel with a little bit more detail. Okay, so we're going to take the last few minutes of today's lesson to go through some of the basic color schemes that you may want to be thinking about as you create your own particular artworks this semester. So the first color scheme that we're going to take a look at is the idea of a warm color scheme. And basically what this means is that we're using yellows, oranges, and reds. And what you'll notice here is if you're looking at the color wheel, right, we tend to be using the colors that are, in this case, on the right side. And all of these colors are grouped together and occupy approximately 1/3 of the space on the color wheel. Right? In contrast, we have cool colors. Right? And from Vincent van Gogh's painting, you can see that it's very, very different. So cool colors tend to be the purples, most of the greens, right, and the purples. Right? We tend to exist kind of down in this area, down here. And they kind of complement each other, the warm and the cool, and they tend to be a little bit opposite. Now, green's a funny color, right? Because green can be both warm and cold, right? But it's only this yellowish green that tends to be a little bit warmer, and that's simply because it has more yellow than it does blue. Okay. Analogous colors kind of are similar to warm and cool in that they are colors that are side by side on the color wheel. However, you're not restricted to them all being sort of in that same kind of warm, cold color family. So as long as you have three colors that are side by side, you're all good, right? So I could use orange, yellow, and green. I could use sort of the reddish purple, and a bluish purple, right? And as long as you're kind of using 3 or 4 of those colors that are all beside each other, right? They tend to work well. And if you kind of pick one color that's warm and the other's cool, or one color that's cool and the others are warm, right, you're able to get some pretty interesting visual dynamics happening in the image, similar to the image that you see here. Okay. A fourth color scheme that we have are complementary colors, right? And these are literally the opposites of the color wheel. Okay, so if we were to draw a straight line through the color wheel, so we see that we have red. If we draw straight through onto the other side, we have green, right? Yellow straight through gives us purple. Orange straight through, oh, orange is here. Orange straight through gives us blue, right? So any two colors that are opposite to each other are technically complementary. So what you'll notice about these pairings is that one is a primary and one is a secondary. As soon as we start moving into the tertiary colors, right, the opposite is also going to be a tertiary color. Right? It's kind of a neat little relationship that exists within the color wheel. Split complementaries are some of my favorites. They're also a little bit more complex, okay? Because what we need to be doing is, instead of thinking of complete opposites, right, we're working with three colors. So if I have yellow as one of my colors in this particular color scheme, I'm going to draw across and I'm going to see, oh, purple is the opposite, but I'm not going to use the direct opposite, this purple here. I'm going to take the bluish purple and the reddish purple and use those three together in order to kind of unify my painting. Likewise, if I take a blue, right, the opposite is orange, but I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to use the ones that are on either side. So a yellowish orange and a reddish orange. Monochromatic colors, right, basically means that you're using one color at a time and simply mixing it with white and black in order to create different values of the one color, right? And because it's a single color used throughout the entire painting, right, you're able to get a fairly unified composition as a whole. We just have three more left. Not neutral colors. Okay? These tend to be ones that are more earth-toned in nature. Right? These are going to be more your beiges, your browns, your grays, your blacks and whites. Right? Think that neutral colors or natural colors are kind of earthy in nature. Okay? If you like neutral colors, you might want to consider accenting it with something that's a little bit brighter. Right? And we'll often see this in interior design and interior decorating, where everything will have this kind of really calm, soothing feeling, but there'll be a splash of color in the middle of something and it grabs our attention. Right? So using an accented neutral color scheme is a great way of creating emphasis. Okay? And lastly, we have triadic colors. Right? And triad means three, so we're going to be using three colors off of our color wheel, but we're going to make sure that they are all equally spaced. So I want you to think about an equilateral triangle. So whatever color you pick, right, the two others are going to be directly across. So based on this color wheel here, it's going to be every fourth color is going to be part of the color scheme. So if I pick this green, for example, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, purple, 1, 2, 3, 4, orange. So it could be using, in this case, that actually turns out to be the secondary colors. But if I were to start moving into the tertiaries, I could have this bluish green, 1, 2, 3, 4, a yellowish orange, 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as a reddish purple. And as long as you're starting to think about how the color wheel is working, right, and being able to identify kind of predictable relationships on the color wheel, chances are you're going to end up with a color scheme for your painting that actually works really well. All right, so that's the basics of color, right? A quick introduction to understanding what color is, how we are able to kind of manipulate color through hue, saturation, and value, how the color wheel works, why we have it, as well as some different possibilities for how to arrange and select colors for your next artwork. All right, good luck. And if you have any questions, please make sure that you're asking. Look after yourselves. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.